Right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this last event of the AQMx webinar series, where we'll be discussing the new sectoral guidance that was launched by the CCAC last month, as well as hear about success stories from key partners. So my name is Juliette Laurent. I'm an air quality specialist at the CCAC Secretariat, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. So we know that crop residue burning in some regions of the world is a leading cause of air pollution, with severe impacts on health, on the environment, as well as economic impacts. So today we'll discuss what profitable alternatives can be provided to farmers by focusing on removing access and information barriers, investing in behavior change and capacity building activities, and strengthening markets for crop residue. So we'll start by doing a deep dive on the new AQMx sectoral guidance on alternatives to crop residue burning, which provides really hands-on and practical recommendations on how to support farmers in that transition. We'll also hear about inspiring success stories from our partners at Self-Help Africa, the Nature Conservancy, and the World Resource Institute. Just to let you know that we'll have time for Q&A towards the end of the session. So you can write your questions in the chat or just raise your hand at the end of the webinar. And also note that we will be recording this session and the recording will be made available on the CCAC website. So before we go into the details of the AQMx sectoral guidance on crop residue burning, I just wanted to give you a brief introduction to the AQMx platform in case you're not familiar with it already. So AQMx stands for the Air Quality Management Exchange Platform, and it is a global one-stop shop for technical knowledge and guidance on air quality management. So this was launched by the CCAC on International Clean Air Day of 2024, following the mandate of member states who called for the development of such a knowledge platform in the UNEA 610 resolution. So on AQMx, you will find three key components. The first one is a resource library with more than 1,400 trusted resources to support air quality managers. So you'll find anything from tools and models to databases, reports, scientific publications. The AQMx library is periodically updated, of course, as new knowledge products become available. And so I also take this opportunity to encourage you to get in touch if you would like to suggest additional resources. The second key component on AQMx is the air quality management guidance, which covers 8 different areas from air quality monitoring to emissions inventory, health impact assessment, legal framework, and so on. This air quality management guidance is structured around 5 stages of engagement to support air quality managers on their clean air journey as they strengthen their capacity. So on the platform, you'll see that stages 1, 2, and 3 are already available, and stages 4 and 5 will be launched on International Clean Air Day of this year, so in early September. And the last component, of course, is the sectoral guidance. And this was really a key ask from the AQMx user community, who highlighted the need for practical recommendations, practical guidance on sectoral mitigations policies to reduce air pollution at the source. And so really we see the sectoral guidance as the implementation guide to the SLCP reduction measures that were identified in the CCAC integrated assessments. So on the margins of the UN Environmental Assembly back in December, we launched 4 sectoral guidance packages for agriculture, of course, and we'll discuss that in detail today, but also for the household energy sector, focusing on expanding access to e-cooking, for the road transport sector, focusing on improving fuel quality, and for the waste management sector, on the elimination of open waste burning. So this process was led by the CCAC Secretariat, but I really want to acknowledge the contribution of the CCAC sectoral hubs members who were actively involved in the review process. And so I want to thank them again for their valuable inputs. Also to let you know that additional sectoral guidance covering new areas will be launched over the course of 2026, so stay tuned to learn more. And so now I'll stop for this quick introduction and give the floor to Dr. P.P. Krishnapriya, the crop residue burning expert who led the development of the AQMx sectoral guidance and who will give us an in-depth presentation of the content and key recommendation. So Krishnapriya, please go ahead.
Good morning and good afternoon, based on where you are right now. Before I start my presentation, I would like to thank CCAC for giving me the opportunity to draft this guidance and all the reviewers who provided feedback during the drafting process. And now, thank you everyone for being here and Juliet for the introduction and for very kindly agreeing to navigate the website as I explain various sections. The sectoral guidance is designed to help policymakers, practitioners, and other key stakeholders to plan and implement policies that mitigate crop residue burning. It provides practical and policy-relevant guidance that can be applied at national and subnational levels. Specifically, CCAC's objective of developing this sectoral guidance is to make it a one-stop shop for policy guidance by curating tools, data, and real-world examples that are otherwise scattered across various organizations and platforms. The sectoral guidance is structured as a step-by-step planning and implementation framework that takes user from diagnosing the issue of crop residue burning to designing, implementing, evaluating, and financing no-burn alternatives. My presentation today is going to be a hands-on workshop to show how the guidance is organized, what sections offer, and most importantly, how you can use it. I will also show you how to steer through various supporting resources present in the AQMx library. Let's start at the top of this page where we have the table of contents. The guidance is organized as you can see on your screens. First is the case for sustainable no-burn crop residue management, followed by a 10-step policy framework. The next couple of sections, A, provide options for financing, and B, address how gender and socioeconomic equity considerations could be integrated into no-burn policies, respectively. Lastly, the guidance webpage describes 5 success stories on efforts to reduce the incidence of crop residue burning. These case studies discuss what part of 10-step policy framework were adopted, the key takeaways, and the possibilities of future replication. Clicking on any one of these sections will take you to the relevant section directly. For example, if I click on step 5, or as you can see, it goes directly to step 5. Now let's go back to section 1. The first section introduces the issue of crop residue burning in a global context. Note that each subsection expands when we click on it and then collapses when we click on it again. Crop residue burning, as Juliet was talking about it, refers to the open field burning of leftover plant residue after harvest. While it's a quick and low-cost practice for farmers, it comes with serious consequences for health, environment, climate, and economy. The next 2 subsections highlight the various impacts associated with crop residue burning. Now see, the last subsection here underscores the benefit from mitigating crop residue burning. This will help in building a case for action that in turn shapes how solutions are designed. Further, note that all references mentioned in the guidance have hyperlinks attached to it, and these are hyperlinked to either where they sit in the AQMx library or within their original institution. For instance, let's click on this reference that is Priya et al. Shamsundar et al. 2019. If we click on this publication, the active link takes us to the AQMx library page dedicated to this resource. This page gives us the details on the resource, such as quick description, the language it is written in, and the region it focuses on, among others. Juliet, can you scroll down a little bit? Then I can show where the description sits. Thank you. Now, if we scroll back, you can see that there is a button you can use to share this resource using a direct link or through email or through social media. Additionally, one can also download this resource by clicking on the download button. When I press the download button, it takes me to a box that specifies the language in which this resource is written in. In this case, it's English. And when I click on the language button, it opens up the paper. And from here, you can download the paper. A quick description of this paper. So this paper synthesizes evidence on alternatives to crop residue burning in Punjab in India and clarifies the business case for these alternative practices. You will hear more from the lead and my co-author on this paper about her current projects, that is Dr. Shamsundar from the Nature Conservancy later in this webinar. Now going back to the main AQMx page, you will see that in each section, we also provide you with the with supporting resources. As we drop down this list, you will see a list of data, tools, and reports, or even papers that can be used for making a case for mitigating crop residue burning. Together, these resources are an accessible collection of compelling evidence that could be presented to stakeholders or donors to make a case for no-burn strategies. Next, now if we scroll down, next is what is the core of the guidance. This is the 10-step framework that provides detail on how to develop, implement, and monitor policies that curb the issue of crop residue burning. Regional stakeholders and governments may already be engaged in many of the framework's steps, sometimes sequentially, sometimes simultaneously. The 10-step framework creates a structured, exhaustive, and ordered method that can help in identifying the elements that are missing or which can be improved upon. It then presents the resources that will support the relevant programs and policies. The first step is to conduct baseline assessments of the status quo. Baseline assessments provide a critical foundation for 1, tracking crop residue burning trends, 2, establishing achievable targets, and 3, serving as reference points for future policy evaluation. We provide the tools and resources for situation when local data and monitoring systems are in place versus when they are not. In the first situation, the guidance encourages governments to rely on their own data and administrative systems to conduct a benchmark of existing outcomes of crop residue burning. When data is not available, the guidance suggests ways in which practitioners can obtain reasonable baseline assessments using credible proxies in the forms of existing country-level data sets, estimates from metadata analysis, and other globally available data sets from trusted resources. Note that we also list other air quality management guidance sections when relevant. If we click on, let's say, the AQMx guidance on air quality monitoring, that's this box here, it will take us to the air quality monitoring guidance hosted on the AQMx platform. This is a great resource for users to determine what key activities need to be implemented in terms of air quality monitoring to support baseline assessments of air quality impacts of residue burning. Now, if we go back, In the listed supporting material, pressing the right, you see a right arrow there. Pressing the right arrow displays additional resources that are not initially visible. Said that, I would strongly encourage the users to explore the listed and the text referenced material. Just to give you a flavor of the supporting resources here, if I click on Emissions Database for Global Atmospheric Research, or EDGAR, it takes me to the AQMx library page that describes this resource. If I further click on download like before, it takes me to the EDGAR database portal. The portal gives data at the country level. If I click on the tab country selection, as you can see, I can pick any country for which I would like to see the statistics for. I will set the data disaggregation level to world for now. Now, scrolling down, I can generate graphs by sector for various emissions. As you see under the air and toxic pollutants section, I can choose the substance for which I need the statistic. Here, there is a great option to select from. You can select black carbon, carbon monoxide, or any of the particulate matter. Here, let's choose PM 2.5, and let's go on to the next tab. Here, I can select the sector for which I want to see the statistics for. Let's choose agriculture. And as you can see, a vast majority of the emissions are generated by crop residue burning. So this graph is giving me breakdown of PM 2.5 by sources within the agricultural sector. This portal is a rich source of data on emissions by regions. The next step, now let's go back to the AQMx page. And let's go to step 2. The next step, that is step 2, here delves into how governments can make institutional arrangements needed for planning and designing no-burn policies. This begins with mapping key stakeholders, creating a task force. This can be interministerial, multidisciplinary, or interdepartmental, depending on the context, and building a strong coordination and engagement both at national and local levels. Again, I list some user-friendly resources which can help policymakers and practitioners to design and execute these engagements. Now, scrolling down, step 3 emphasizes A, identifying suitable no-burn alternatives, B, setting objectives for reducing events of crop residue burning, and C, adopting an action plan. Specifically, I list and provide an overview of advantages and disadvantages of adopting various no-burn strategies. The in situ or in-field alternatives include strategies like mulching, incorporating, and composting, while ex situ or out-of-field measures include strengthening markets that use crop residue as inputs. Crop diversification touches upon strategies such as agroforestry and crop switching. Lastly, I describe financing options needed for no-burn crop residue management that require sustained and equitable support. This helps farmers to manage the short-term risks of adopting new practices and technologies while driving long-term change. These include payment for ecosystem services, conditional cash transfers, and green microfinance. We provide a range of reference like before for each strategy. For example, if we go to the ex situ strategies, we list CEEW report, that is CEEW 2021A here, that explores the viability and scalability of ex situ measures in India. Again, the choice of strategy is strictly based on local contexts. Now let's go back to the AQMx page and scroll down. In the supporting resources, let's look at step 4 here, which talks about the importance of no-burn policy integration with national and local policies to create synergies. In this, let's look at the supporting material. I would like to highlight the WRI and Oxfam working paper here, which is the last one. Yes. This paper talks about integrating agricultural policies and targets, including crop residue burning, into NDCs. When we click on the download button here, you see that the paper is available in 3 different languages. By the way, we have a speaker from WRI, as Juliet had mentioned, who would be speaking in a bit. Now, going back to the AQMx website, let's go to step 5. The guidance also describes standards, norms, and regulations that ensure sustained adoption of no-burn strategies. This includes certifying machineries and technologies for no-burn residue management, setting quality standards for residue-derived products such as biochar, pellets, biofuel, and others, and creating regulatory incentives for their markets. Such clear regulatory framework reduces uncertainty for stakeholders and build confidence in the systems in place. The next step highlights the importance of policies being complemented with communication and awareness-raising efforts. Outreach should reach farmers, extension agents, community leaders, and public through multiple channels. Messaging can highlight health benefits, soil improvements, financial incentives, and success stories from early adopters. Effective communication like this builds trust, counters misconceptions, and motivates behavior change. It also informs stakeholders about incentives, regulatory requirements, and available support services, thus increasing the likelihood of sustained adoption. The next step is to roll out the selected strategies, which is step 7. Implementation should be phased to allow learning and adjustment. Engaging local partners, service providers, and farmer groups is critical to facilitate uptake of policies and also to troubleshoot issues early in the process. And this brings us to step 8 that describes various ways of enforcing the set of chosen strategies. Again, I'm not going to go into details, but not all of this subsection would apply to all strategies. Importantly, enforcement works best when there are viable options. Otherwise, punitive measurements without feasible options just become a risk for unfairness and backlash. The guidance also encourages investment in ongoing training and technical capacity building. It describes the training and capacity development that are required for various stakeholders. For instance, agricultural extension agents need knowledge of alternative practices and technologies to effectively support farmers, while farmers benefit from hands-on training, demonstration, and peer learning opportunities that help build confidence in new methods. Private service providers and cooperatives also require training to manage equipment and logistics. Capacity building strengthens technical skills, enhances institutional ability to plan and manage programs, and foster long-term adoption of no-burn solution through local expertise and leadership. Now, moving to these supporting resources here. Here, I would like to draw your attention to this great resource from Self-Help Africa. It's a training guide for users such as extension workers. Juliet, would you click on it? Thank you. And this is based in Nigeria. So this is a training guide for users to help Nigerian farmers to adopt no-burn alternatives. This resource can be easily adapted and applied to contexts that are similar to that in Nigeria. Now, going back to the sectoral guidance, note that these supporting resources, can we go back to the resources, please? For capacity building? Yes, thank you. Note that these resources also provide additional material that can be used by stakeholders to craft and implement communication and awareness-raising interventions, as well as real-world examples that can be used for inspiration. Now, this brings me to the last step, step 10. which emphasizes that having a robust M&E framework in place will indicate when policies aren't working as indicated or when it is time to course correct. This will improve transparency and strengthen policy accountability. Talking about the policies, let's look at financing. The guidance also presents a range of financing mechanisms to support no-burn policies. These include financing options for low, mid-range, as well as high-cost interventions. I won't be going into the details right now, but feel free to go over them to learn what are the policies which come under these three categories and what are the different finance instruments that can be used. Again, if we go to this supporting materials for this, I list a whole set of supporting material that not only explores various ways of financing no-burn policies, but also help understand the different financing instruments and how to make these financing instruments and financing equitable. Talking about equity, let's go to the next section. The guidance also emphasizes integrating gender and socioeconomic equity into no-burn policies. Women central to agriculture often face barriers such as limited land access or lack of access to credit and training. To address this, the guidance recommends gender mainstreaming and targeted measures. It also highlights the need to support small landholders, indigenous people, and marginalized groups through culturally appropriate training, community engagement, and sustained support for uptake of no-burn policy instruments. The last section now, can we go to the last section, please? Yes, thank you. The last section of the sectoral guidance highlights multiple real-life examples where coordinated policy, community engagement, and sustained practices reduced crop residue burning. Across these cases, success stemmed from policy support, financial incentives, local leadership, and visibility of tangible benefits for farmers. These illustrate scalable pathways to reduce crop residue burning. For instance, let's click on Honduras case study. Thank you. For instance, if we look at this case study, the Honduras Guama model, this model was introduced in Honduras, as the name suggests, and it introduced Inga alley cropping and agroforestry system to replace slash and burn practices in the area. This led to helping 600 households initially to transition to permanent systems that conserved soil and offered diversified income. The model was later scaled up in the region and also was replicated in various regions which were as big as 15. So it was quite replicable in this case. Please feel free to learn about other case studies where we see partial or full success. And in the interest of time, I will stop here. And thank you, Juliet, for navigating the website.
Thank you so much, Krishna Priya. That was a very clear and comprehensive presentation of the guidance. I hope all participants got a good sense of how they can use it on a very practical basis to support their activities. We really hope that this sectoral guidance can be a relevant tool for you to start tackling crop residue burning, whichever country you are currently working in. I just want to stress again that this guidance is not necessarily meant to be read from A to Z, and you can also, of course, just dive directly into the specific steps or topics that you are most interested in or that you are facing the most difficulties with. And yes, as Krishna Priya was saying, we are very interested to hear your feedback about the guidance and also to hear suggestions for additional topics that we could cover in the future. So now we'll move to the second part of this webinar, where we will hear about real-world success stories from key stakeholders in the field of crop residue management. They will tell us about best practices and on-the-ground case studies. So our first speaker is Julius Awe, who is a program manager at Self-Help Africa, and who will tell us about the key learnings from a project they've been implementing in Nigeria, working closely with farmers and extension workers. So Julius, please take the floor.
Thank you so much, Juliet, for the opportunity given to me. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are. I want to quickly talk about the success stories as regards to abatement of short-lived climate pollutants in the Nigerian agricultural sector. In Nigeria, specifically in Boko local government of Benue State. Next slide. Yeah, so the project abatement of short-lived climate pollutants as a project in the Nigerian agricultural sector by reducing open field burning was designed by Self-Help Africa to respond to the call for proposal by the Climate and Clean Air Coalition in support of the government of Nigeria to actually deliver sustainable behavior change and reduce open field burning in 100 communities in Boko local government of Benue State. So the project was to provide strategic stakeholders engagement and capacity building of government extension agents and to work with farmers as well. Budget was 198,175, and the project was for 2 years, from February 2024, and we'll be ending the project come the end of this month. Next slide. So, yeah, the project was implemented in 100 communities, as I had said. However, while the project implementation and capacity building activities were focused in Boko local government, in Benue State, one of the states in Nigeria, the successes that are coming from this particular project are to be shared, be generated far and wide to all the geopolitical zones of Nigeria because we are partnering with the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. Next slide, please. Yeah, so our participants, we engaged 550 farmers from Boko who are formed into 22 groups of 25 farmers each and selected from the communities. We also worked with 45 agricultural extension officers across geopolitical zones in Nigeria, 35 from Boko and the remaining 10 from other geopolitical zones, so that they will learn and understand what we are doing in the field. Next slide. So what are the activities that we did with these people? Before we talk about the impact, we did different kinds of activities with them. First and foremost, capacity building activities we had with a training of trainers with the extension agents, 45 of them. We trained them on integrated pest management, integrated soil fertility management, where we talked about the use of neem, and other biopesticides for the pest management, and we talked about the soil fertility management, the use of organic manure instead of chemical fertilizers. We talked about biochar briquettes production. We talked about composting and other no-burn alternative practices, and these were cascaded down to the farmers using the farmer field school approach, where they were doing practical. There was an establishment of a demonstration farm where we had them learn, and then the control farm the other way, where they do other practices, and then we take the no-burn alternative practices with them in the demonstration farms to see what we get from the field. And also maybe we talked about behavioral change communication activities. That was so much in the project. We talked about, we produced a lot of IEC materials, information, education, and communication materials. We did radio jingles where it is done every week, daily, every week, to see that community members get to know, and we provide the phone numbers of the extension agents who will now, the community members and the farmers will now call them if they have issues, and to ask a lot of questions and things that are happening around them. We did weekly talk shows and other behavioral change activities. As well as BCC campaigns, using a vehicle, using the jingles, going around the communities, doing sensitization in the communities. We did that kind of massive activities in the communities. There were also monitoring activities to see where we are going. Of course, from the beginning, we had a baseline survey to test and see what is before we start the project, and also scoping to understand the capacity of the local government extension agents before we start the project with them. We are having quarterly monitoring always, every time, to see what we are doing, and then we come back to the drawing board to see how it goes. And also implementation steering committee that is formed by the federal government, who will always come for supportive monitoring in the field. We also had review activities, quarterly reviews, we had midterm reviews. We also had learning visits to research institutions to learn from them. So in all this that we did with the farmers, what are the impacts? Let's just talk about the little highlight. We've seen a remarkable transformation in how communities approach farming, embracing methods that benefit both their livelihoods and the environment in the area of behavioral change, cultivating sustainable futures. Can we move to the next slide, please? On environmental stewardship, community members, the farmers that we worked with, have been able to adopt no-burn alternative practices. For example, residue incorporation. This had not been before we came. They were burning all their residue each time they want to farm. And so farmers now incorporate crop residues into the soil, enhancing organic matter. Animal feed, utilization of certain residues as supplementary feed for livestock, and reducing waste as well. They've been able to learn about composting, conversion of agricultural waste into nutrient-rich compost for natural fertilizers, and then mulching as part of it. Actually, the shift away from this traditional stubble burning has significantly reduced air pollution and improved soil fertility, making a crucial step towards sustaining agriculture. Can we move to the next slide? So climate mitigation results. At the beginning of the project, what we had was during the baseline survey, we discovered that the farmers and community members were burning crop residues. This was, in short, part of their lives, and they gave us reasons why they did that, because of lack of awareness. But the result we have seen at the end of the project during end-line survey is that drastically they stopped open field burning from 67% where it was during the baseline with them to 21% just within the 2 years that we've worked with them. Next slide. Changes in farming practices, crop diversification. Farmers are able to understand that they should to adopt diverse crops rotation in their farms due to what we have discussed with them, using leguminous crops, and to see how we tackle some kind of pests that are in the field. Then organic fertilizers, I talked about. Having them to understand that organic fertilizers are good, using the compost to see instead of chemical fertilizers. This has gone a long way in helping the farmers. Let's move to the next slide. We'll talk more about that. Juliet. Climate resilience outcome. Of course, we have been able to work with them to understand about the issue of drought and drought resistance, using improved crop varieties for their farms and areas where there are droughts. They've been able to learn all that, and then by incorporating crop residues back to the soil during this period, they have been able to improve soil health through their practices, cover cropping, and organic matter addition to the soil. Next slide. Extension services impacts, empowering farmers. We have been able to see that the extension agents from during the scoping before before the start of the project, the extension services were as good as dead. But during this period, we've been able to build their capacity, return back to the field. So they give on-farm demonstrations and practical hands-on farming using the farmer field school approach with the farmers. From the picture, you see one of the extension agents engaging the farmers, and they are doing this. While they are doing this, they are learning, asking questions. They do it as a practical. They come to check what has happened, and at the end of the day, they are able to learn from it using farmer field schools, even digital platforms. They've been able to go for extension services to learn more through the digital platforms that we created for them. They've been able to study. And then expert consultations, they now go to different, the farmers now call them and speak with them to know what the problems are, and they give their expert consultations. Next slide, please. Inclusion and social outcomes. There's increased participation. I would like to tell us that before the projects at baseline, and when we're doing farmers group selection, we met with the community leaders. Group selection was done strictly on the fact that only men because they own the lands. So we're able to do a lot of sensitization. We brought in a lot of gender and inclusion into our trainings. So the people that had the people that had from the beginning, the men in the course of going on in the project, intervening in the project, men we had like 97% of men. For the groups, for example, if we have a group of 25, we will have like 2 or 3 women being in the group. But as we moved along, some of them had thought earlier that maybe monies will be provided for them. And then when they discovered that it's just part and parcel of gaining knowledge, many of the men had dropped off along the line. So from that very like 10%, we now have 60% of women due to inclusion and social, inclusion in the course of the project. So we have 60% men and 40% at the end of the project. Improved livelihood. So in the course of the project as well, women especially and men have been able to learn the making of biochar briquettes. This has helped them to produce using the crop residues to produce biochar briquettes for their own use, and also they are going commercial to see that they be able to improve their livelihoods and their families. Strengthen the communities, of course, because we have brought in social inclusion. We brought in awareness about all this. There's much social cohesion in the communities. And then knowledge empowerment. This woman you see by the side, before now, had not understood how to read a rain gauge. But in the course of their intervention, she could read the rain gauge because they were installed in their farm to understand the amount of rainfall so that they will know when to best intervene in their farms. Next slide. Yeah, how overall, how will the AQMx guidance support scale up and replication? Yeah, it provides a standardized framework for adopting alternatives to crop residue. Of course, we have heard from the last speaker. She spoke a lot about the guidance document. Of course, if you visit that, you will see, and it will help us to see that we reduce open field burning in our countries. It aligns with the air quality, climate, and agricultural policies, enabling institutional uptake and supports evidence-based decision-making for farmers, extension services, and policymakers, and offers adaptable approaches that can be replicated across LGAs, states, and agroecological zones. I will stop here for want of time. I will be sharing the complete slide. This one is an abridged copy. I'll be sharing the complete slide after this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Julius, for this presentation. It's really interesting to see such a focus on communications, behavior change, engaging with extension workers to provide capacity building, and also great to see, as you have highlighted, that the benefits for air quality and soil fertility are immediate. And also great to see that there is alignment and further replication potential through the AQMx guidance. So thank you again for your presentation. So now we will move to our next speaker. So it's my pleasure to introduce Priya Shyamsundar, who is a lead economist at the Nature Conservancy. She has published multiple papers on alternatives to crop residue burning in India and will tell us more about her work. So Priya, please go ahead.
Thank you, Juliet. Let's see if I can share my slides. Just give me a second to open these. You're seeing my screen, I presume?
Yes.
Is that all okay? Yeah, all right, very good. You see the slide deck, very good.
Yes, yeah, perfect.
So thank you so much for this invitation. It's just such a pleasure to be able to listen to the guidelines because they reflect much of the work that we've been doing and the steps that we've taken. And so it's really great to see how the guidelines have built on the lived experiences of projects like the one in Nigeria that I just listened to. Thank you, Julius. That was also very super interesting to also see the alignment with some of the activities that we have undertaken in India. And I'll talk, as you will see, as I talk through this presentation. So what I hope to do today is discuss the challenge of crop residue burning in India, particularly in the Indo-Gangetic plains, and the very long, in my mind, non-linear process of achieving meaningful change. This work is based on the Nature Conservancy's Prana initiative in Punjab and draws on multiple years of farmer survey data and analysis conducted with the help of KPMG India. My co-author here, Hina Sharma, was at the meeting but may have just left to do something else. She's fully enmeshed in the work in India and hopefully will be back for answering questions. But anyway, this presentation reflects both implementation experience and some emerging empirical evidence. But if you will indulge me for just half a minute, I want to talk to you about the Nature Conservancy. As many of you may not know us, the majority of TNC, as we call it, our work focuses on two key issues: climate change mitigation and adaptation, and the protection and sustainable use of our lands, forests, water, and oceans. This work that I'm presenting, it's squarely within TNC's mission to tackle these urgent crises. Agricultural residue burning sits at the intersection of climate mitigation, air quality, soil health, as Julius just discussed, and people's health and welfare, making it a critical systems challenge for conservation. Again, just to tell you very briefly about TNC, we are a global environmental nonprofit working in 70 plus countries and territories. We combine direct conservation with deep local partnerships and also engage with market and policy solutions. This scale allows us to test, learn, and adapt solutions like Prana, and to connect field level evidence with national and global policy dialogue on climate and agriculture, just as I am doing today. So I'm really grateful for this invitation. Okay, let's come to agricultural residue burning in Northwest India. The rice paddy system underpins food security in the Indo-Gangetic plains. And what I need you to understand that is that it underpins food security in India. The farmers in Punjab, who we'll be talking about, were the ones who experimented with the Green Revolution when it happened 50 years ago. So they are savvy, they're smart, they know what they're doing, um, and they are also risk takers within what seems reasonable to them. Our work, as I said, is mainly in the state of Punjab, where farmers face a very narrow window between rice harvest and wheat sowing. It's a two-crop system. And so farmers have to clear their lands in order to sow their wheat. And the window is very short. It could be 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And this makes burning of crop residue the fastest often and the cheapest option. The resulting smog has severe environmental and public health impacts every single year, including in New Delhi, with its very large population, because the nation capital sits within the airshed of this region. And so the smog is incredible. For those of you who, they have something called air pollution days, that children are not allowed to go to school in New Delhi on some days because the smog is so bad. Of course, it's not all attributable to the burning in Northwest India. There are many reasons for bad air quality, but this can contribute to it. Our earlier work, which Krishna Priya very kindly alluded to, published and documented the economic drivers and technological opportunities to reduce residue burning. We've been working on this for a while. That's why I call it the long arc of success. However, it soon became clear to us that we needed to go beyond straightforward economics, which is the bottom line. The economics needs to work out for farmers to change their practices. But that's not adequate. We needed to understand the institutional and behavioral challenges that drive particularly technology use and adoption. So Prana builds on these insights. Prana, or promoting regenerative and no-burn agriculture. Prana in many of our Indian languages also means breath, to take a breath. This was designed as a comprehensive intervention to promote no-burn agriculture in Punjab. The aim was, of course, as Julia said, in Nigeria, to not only reduce burning, but to do so in ways that make sense economically and was financially viable and scalable. And so, like all good programs, we had a theory of change, addresses sort of these linked elements between identification of the problem and strategies going to outcomes. Our understanding was that, like all of us, there's short-term decision making. You need, the margins are really tiny in farming, and farmers make those decisions based on the margins that they get. But perhaps even more important, or equally important, is the policy lock-in that exists in the right-wheat system in Northwest India. The Indian government, for good reason, to ensure food security in the country, has a system of price support for rice and wheat, and it procures most of the food, the rice and wheat that it needs to ensure food security for its public distribution system. A significant amount of this comes from the Punjab region. So there is a lock-in here where the incentive to move away from rice and wheat is very small for farmers because they have guaranteed market with price support. And then, of course, the third big reason why this was a challenge is because there was limited access to machinery that would enable farmers to move away from crop residue burning. There are machines, technological options that you can use to incorporate the residue into the lands, and there was limited access. So our strategy was to think about awareness building, just as in Nigeria, that's the first step: capacity strengthening, financial de-risking, policy partnerships, and increasing CRM access, and hoping for no-burn adoption, greenhouse gas reduction, improved soil health, and evidence for policy reform. So what did we actually do? We had our implementation focused on 5 pillars. First was demonstration, again, aligns with your guidelines and aligns what you just heard from Nigeria. So there's a lot of on-farm demo plots, soil testing and monitoring. Capacity building was critical. Farmer field schools, lead farmers doing the capacity strengthening for other farmers, personalized support, one-to-one farm visits to diagnose and resolve field level constraints. We had community resource persons called Kisan Mitra. Mitra is a friend, so Kisan is farmer. So these farmer friends were deployed across the state to help with the on the job field level constraints, followed up with support from agronomic experts if as needed. And of course, there were behavior change activities, YouTube channels with farmers, lead farmers, influencers talking about these alternatives, farmer mobilization at the village level, street plays, and so on. A lot of this also happened. And then, the critical part was to ensure that machinery was available. This is it's really key because of the short window between rice harvest and wheat sowing, and the need to prepare your land with the right kind of machines in order to sow your wheat on time. So we worked with service providers to strengthen their capacity, to link them with farmers to ensure timely delivery of machines. And this was a very large operation. We worked across 18 districts in the state with 2 partners. In the map that you see, the pink and the green are the 2 partners. We worked across 6,200 villages in 18 of the 23 paddy growing districts. So it's sort of the core innovation was round-the-year engagement approach. Instead of focusing only on the harvest, Prana worked with farmers across the entire rice wheat cycle, aligning or attempting to align agronomy, machinery access, training, and monitoring at each stage. And I think this is beginning to, it is a big exercise because of the scale of it. So all of this, capacity building, storytelling, technical training, nudges, spirituality, and ecology, all of this was part of the program. And then we have some data that I'm going to show you now for us to begin to understand what some changes may have come about as a result. So we work with KPMG to collect data periodically from a sample of farmers. So we used a stratified random sampling strategy to get this data, covering intervention, non-intervention, and control villages. This panel structure allows us to track change over the period of the project. So we have data on something like 2,000 plus farms. So what do we say? This slide shows changes within our sample of farmers between 2021 and 2024 without attribution or causality. So that is a bigger step that we have not taken. You are just seeing the raw data, so I do not want to make the case for causality over here. I just need you to keep that in mind. So what this data suggests is that there is a 25% percentage point decline in farmers burning residue in the observations in our sample. There's a 5% point increase in farmers using incorporation of the straw into the ground as a strategy so that they don't have to burn the straw. There is a 24% percentage point increase in farmers who are utilizing ex situ management. 5-6 years ago, there was no option for ex situ management. There were no takers of the straw, but that has changed in the last few years. And so there is a lot of ex situ management also happening. They're getting rid of the straw. So you have to think holistically, right? The paddy varietal choice actually plays a critical role, but can be overlooked. Short duration varieties lead to less stubble and also offer farmers more time to take action on their stubble. So the government of Punjab is also doing a lot of work on this, as well as our own interventions. As you can see, this is between 2021 and 2024. The share of farmers cultivating long duration paddy has reduced over the period, a 33% decrease in the intervention group and a 20% decrease in the non-intervention group. So this is a big behavior change for farmers to go from one rice variety to another rice variety. They do it if it makes sense to them, otherwise they won't, of course. So but we see this happening. Technological change is another important issue. As I said, there is technology that can be used to incorporate the stubble into the land, and there's been a shift. As you can see, there's fairly significant increase in the adoption of this one particular seeder called the super seeder. And this is very good to see. And then it sort of, like everything else, it sort of tapers off. You see this big jump and then it tapers off. So in trying to find out why farmers, what they identify as problems for their continued practice of crop residue burning, I've just highlighted from our baseline and the most recent survey, 70% of farmers used to say that lack of access to machinery was the biggest reason for why they were doing this. And now that is down to 58%. So there's still, it's just because that time window is so short. But 84% of farmers used to say that the cost is the problem, and that has declined dramatically. So that's interesting to see. But farmers have also shifted from, oh, Juliet, I've run out of time, I realize. They've shifted from complete burning to partial burning. And we are trying to understand why that is the case. And in part, that's because there's less machinery required, lower risk of penalties, and so on. I've just got a couple more slides. So we have also realized that focusing just on burning is only gets us so far, right? I mean, farmers, you have to be completely holistic about this. So we're trying to expand into 3 strategic pathways. First, we want to improve rice management, scale up alternate wet and drying to reduce methane production, direct sowing rice, pay for result models, and that sort of thing. We're figuring that out as a strategy. We want to develop climate smart crops. Agroforestry is something that we are thinking about. And then addressing the water energy food nexus through solarization of tube wells. So these are strategies that we are now building up. And I will quickly tell you some just off the books. I've just finished this project. The results are not even out. I'm just showing this to you very quickly. We've done some new work on sort of the opportunities for poplar-based agroforestry in the region. It's very small right now, but the returns are clearly much better if farmers were to adopt it. And what we're finding is that if you were to introduce a subsidy of 30% of cost share subsidy, then you're likely to increase the probability of adoption by 18% by farmers who have already planted trees. So that is an important caveat. Anyway, we're just beginning to do this work. Now, my last slide. So what, I've been thinking about this for a long time. We did some work in my previous job looking across South Asia. And there are many lessons here. the policy lock-in seriously constrains options. I described what the lock-in is. So really understanding the enabling conditions is critical, especially if you want to scale. So that's, and those are very hard to shift to. I recognize that. But farmers are open to change. You just have to, I think the Nigeria case shows that. Certainly our data seems to be suggesting that they're willing to take risks, but those risks need to make sense to them. Social networks are influential. Peer networks have consistently shown in our data that farmers respond to peer networks. So this is an important behavioral issue that we need to keep in mind. And the Nigeria case showed that. Technology is absolutely central, but enormously uncertain. It's not anything that you can predict very easily. And that uncertainty is paralyzing for everybody, including for farmers. So, but you have to work with it. And of course, broader systems need to be engaged. So I end with saying meaningful change is feasible, but it takes time. It needs to be holistic, especially if you want to scale. But I will leave you with that and say thank you for this opportunity. And I'm so glad you're doing this to get the word out globally. Thank you. And can I stop sharing? Let me stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Priya, for this great overview of this very systematic approach you've been implementing in Punjab. And as you've been mentioning, this is a very specific context of double cropping, but I do think that many of the findings and key lessons you've shared can be translated and applied into other contexts. So I'm sure participants found this really, really fascinating. Now we will move to our last presentation of today's webinar. We will hear about a new exciting project that the World Resource Institute is currently implementing in Nepal and Ethiopia, this time focusing on how to transform crop residue into high-value feed. So unfortunately, our speaker, Swati Hegde from WRY, couldn't be with us in person, but she sent a recording of her presentation that I will share now.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to present here today. On behalf of the World Resources Institute and International Livestock Research Institute, I'm glad to share a CCAC-funded project focused on transforming crop residues into higher value feed, which is a dual approach to increase productivity and reduce emissions in Ethiopia and Nepal. My name is Swati Hegde, and I am the Manager of Agricultural Methane at WRI. The goal of this project is to upgrade current use of crop residues into a higher quality animal feed. So at a high level, the project does these things. It pilots technologies, it builds business models, quantifies greenhouse gas emissions, and more importantly, works closely with local stakeholders to reduce some of the adoption barriers. And we have several partners in the process, including feed companies, research organizations, ministries, and so on. Coming to a little bit of background, one of the key challenges we are addressing is crop residue burning, which has very real air quality impacts. In Nepal, roughly 3 million tons of crop residues, which is about 22% of what is generated, are burnt each year, with most of this concentrated in a region called Terai. And there is growing evidence which is also showing that this crop residue burning is directly linked to forest fires in Nepal, which kind of worsens the air quality issues there. In Ethiopia, the context is a little different, but equally important. Crop residues are commonly used as cooking fuel, leading to significant indoor air pollution, and women and children are particularly exposed because of their role in cooking and household management. At the same time, livestock systems are under pressure to feed a growing population without increasing land use emissions. So feed quality sits right at the center of this challenge. Low quality feed limits productivity and increases methane emissions per unit of milk or meat, while higher quality feed often relies on grains and competes with food crops and land. So Ethiopia and Nepal, as you can see in the graph, have a high methane intensity, primarily because of poor feeding. So good news is crop residues are already a major part of livestock diets in Asia and sub-Saharan Africa. And in some dairy systems, they can make up to 70% of the feed basket. And nearly half to more than half of the feed that a cow eats comes from crop residues in Nepal and Ethiopia. However, there are practical problems. And one of the problems is that crop residues have very poor digestibility. So cows cannot digest it well, and that's why there is a lot of methane that is produced and the milk production is lower. They also have lower protein content that doesn't support optimal milk yield. So some crop residues are also not that tasty, and so cows eat less and therefore lower productivity. However, a little improvement can go a long way, and as little as 1% change or increase in digestibility can lead to as much as 5 to 6% increase in milk yield. So even the modest improvements can bring a big difference. The first strategy we are working on for upgrading crop residue quality as a feed and hence improve their value is crop residue treatment. The basic idea is to improve digestibility using physical, chemical, or biological methods. However, many treatment approaches are technically demanding and knowledge intensive. They require training and in some cases specialized equipment. When these are expected to be managed at the farm level, adoption tends to be low. And that's why in this project, we are testing these treatments with a business-centric approach where the technical and labor burden does not fall on individual farmers. The second strategy we are working on is dual-purpose crops. And this is based on the principle that some crop varieties inherently produce residues with higher digestibility and hence have better feeding value, even when they have similar grain yields. For example, India has seen some early success in this area, and we want to have some knowledge sharing sessions with Indian scientists to see how we can translate some of these learnings from India to Nepal and Ethiopia. So in this project, we are also engaging with plant breeding institutions and breeders to assess barriers to incorporating feed quality traits into breeding programs and develop a policy guidance document to address it. So we are in the process of building some advisory committees to do this exact thing. However, we might have to rethink what drives adoption because regardless of how good a technology is, there are always adoption barriers and enabling conditions that need to be created. So many residue treatment technologies have existed for decades, and their limited adoption is because either these approaches were often labor intensive, knowledge intensive, and placed most of the burden on farmers. So economic benefits were never really quantified clearly, and farmers were in a way expected to absorb both the risk and the effort. And adoption generally fails when the farmers are to absorb all the risk. So our theory of change is a shift toward business-led models. Instead of expecting individual farmers to manage residue and treat it themselves, enterprises handle the collection, processing, and quality control. So farmers can access improved feed without taking on technical complexity or upfront costs. So through business models, we can reduce both informational and monetary barriers, as well as create clear markets for crop residues. In a way, we are increasing the value of crop residue. So this approach also fits well within the circular economy logic, especially compared to some alternative pathways like biofuels, where benefits can be more diffuse at the farm level. So eventually it's important to quantify farmer benefits. These kinds of cost benefit analysis can serve as an entry point for adoption of climate technologies. However, to be honest, most climate technologies do come at a cost, and someone has to bear the cost, and most definitely it's not the smallholder farmers. So therefore, business models are particularly needed. We might even need high cost technologies, high cost and more advanced technologies. For example, in our case, a lot of research from lignocellulosic bioethanol research can be translated into upgrading crop residues, and the benefits can be an order of magnitude higher. However, these do need quick pilots to prove and significant initial investment. But these are particularly promising now because of grain shortages and current inefficiencies. These are all our partners. This project is built on partnerships from the start. And in Ethiopia and Nepal, we are working closely with private feed companies and cooperatives, research partners to run our pilots. And also we are sharing our knowledge, keeping all other research groups informed about our project. In Ethiopia, we also held a workshop in early August and followed it with field visits to crop residue markets and other institutions to understand local residue markets and ongoing initiatives. Through this process, 2 private sector partners have emerged to run demonstration pilots while we continue to engage with government and research stakeholders. So in Nepal, through ILRI's leadership, we have 2 partnerships, including an agricultural cooperative with over 2,000 women farmer members. And through the CCAC project, partners from Nepal also visited India to learn from existing residue-based feed technologies and evaluate what the equipment needs are, such as, there is this equipment called baler, which would be needed, which a traditional grain-based feed manufacturer would not use. So we are also analyzing the capacity building. We'll build on this learning through a joint meeting again in Nepal this April, bringing partners from both countries, and also we plan to train feed manufacturers from Ethiopia by hosting them in Nepal. Adoption ultimately depends on economics, and like I mentioned earlier, most climate technologies come at a cost, and smallholder farmers should not be the ones absorbing that cost. Regardless of the specific technology, enabling conditions do matter. Financing mechanisms and policy support play a critical role. And just like the AQMx guidance document highlights, several financial instruments that I think are particularly interesting, and I'd be very interested in exploring how some of these could be applied in this context going forward. I'll close by saying that this project is ultimately about making alternatives to burning work in practice, both like technically, economically, as well as institutionally. And I would love to hear your thoughts about the project. And we are more than open to collaborating and expanding the project. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak. And that concludes my talk.
Right. So thank you again, Swati, for sharing this recording with us today. We'll definitely be looking forward to hearing some updates about this great project. So now we can move to our Q&A session. So if you have any questions to our speakers, please just go ahead and raise your hand so you can take the floor. And before we take any question, I just want to flag that you'll find a poll in the chat that you can answer to share with us your suggestions and priorities priorities in terms of additional AQMx guidance that could be developed for the agricultural sector. So yes, I see a hand from Gopal. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for excellent presentation এবং very important subject. My simple suggestion that actually crop residue burning is done by farmers at the remote part of cropland. When we select for training purpose, we select leaders of the farmers group, top management group like this. Remotest part of the farmers cannot get the proper training and they cannot understand the importance of crop residue burning. So if you do grassroots level farmers in the remotest part, then it will be effective. And I think some social media advertisement can be helpful because everybody, every farmers use Facebook and TV show, then you can understand that what is the importance of these types of activities. And one thing, another presentation, Kishwati, was dual purpose maize cultivation. What is the main topics? Dual purpose maize cultivation. I have taken from Bangladesh. Thank you.
Thank you, Gopal. Do any of the speakers want to react? If you want to just take the floor. Right, so no immediate reaction. If you have questions, you can again just raise your hand. But in the meantime, I see that we have a few questions in the chat, so I'll just read them out loud. We have a question from Chaipur asking what role should local government and local authorities play in reducing agricultural burning. Priya or Krishna Priya, do you want to answer that question?
I'm happy. There's a 2 or 3 other questions on the Punjab case. You want me to get to all of them or just answer that question? I'm happy to answer that question. You know, none of this can be done really without, especially at scale, without working with local governments, because they are the implementers, whether it is of bans or whether it is of subsidy policies. So yeah, so the straight answer is, the short answer is, we might, in the case of Prana, a lot of the implementation is being done through the support of NGOs and such, but we are working in collaboration with the local government.
Yeah, just to add to that, while I was researching for the sectoral guidance, one of the things that came up over and over is that local context really dictates what kind of strategies ultimately you take up. And that depends on the local governance system, the local conditions, amongst other context-specific characteristics. So certainly, I would agree with Priya that you need to have local governments involved.
Thank you both. Another question we got from participants in the chat is asking for clarification on the crop diversification strategy that was mentioned in the AQMx guidance. And the question is basically to ask how this shifting to other crops, diversifying the crop can actually solve the problem of crop residue burning, because residue is still being produced in the end.
I'll go first. Just to clarify what's already in the sectoral guidance. So one of the things that we mention is crop diversification. And the way it helps is, one, you can diversify to crops that take shorter time to mature, as Priya was explaining in her talk, that it's majorly one of the problems in the Indian 2-crop system is that the period of time between harvest and sowing is too little for farmers to really do anything about managing besides burning. And you can eliminate that by investing into crops that mature early. That's one way to go about it. Yes, they do also have crop residue that is produced, but we can always opt for the ones which produce less crop residue. The other alternative is to also move to crops which are similar but have residue that can be used for other uses. For instance, there is a case for basmati rice over the regular paddy varieties that are being grown in the region. And one of the arguments that's often made is that the regular rice variety has high silica content, which is not suitable for livestock feed as much as the basmati rice crop residue. This is just an example, but there can be others as well. So Priya, please chime in if you have more examples or if you have other perspectives. And Julius, you're also on the calls, I see. So please chime in with your insights.
I think that was spot on. I mean, we are also, sorry, Julius. Go ahead, Julius.
Okay, so I was going to speak from the practical point of view, what we actually saw from the field. I will not be talking about the crop residue. Yes, just as you have said, yeah, all of them, they produce crop residues. However, in another way, we were farming both grains and leguminous crops in a particular farm. So we had the leguminous, I mean the grains, like we were planting maize in that particular farm. We discovered that in this part of the world, crops are attacked by striga, which is called witchweed. We didn't discover that earlier, only to discover that in the course of doing the farm in a particular farm, and what we came to understand when we discussed with practitioners in the sector was we could do mixed farming with leguminous crops in the course of cultivating that particular land. The leguminous crops, they have a lot of nitrogen, and they are able to fight the striga. In some of the farms where we cultivated, of course, leguminous crops, there were no striga attacks. So if there's a kind of mixed cropping in the particular farms, it will go a long way to reduce striga attack for the cereal crops. Thanks, and over.
Thank you both. I see a few questions in the chat related to soil quality and soil nutrient content, asking what type of strategies for alternatives to crop residue burning have the most beneficial impacts on soil quality, as well as a specific question on the project in Punjab that Priya was presenting, asking if there was any quantification of the impacts of soil health due to improved crop residue management.
Yeah, thank you folks for all the interest. We are actually doing the soil testing right now, and so we don't have results, but the expectation is that soil organic carbon content will improve, but we do this sort of monitoring on the ground, so hopefully we'll have results on that sooner than later. There were some other questions on attitudes towards pest increases from new technology, and we're not finding, the fact that the new technology, there's been such a jump in the use in the new technology, that is proof, that is proof that farmers will only take it up if it does work in their favor. So I think that is proof of the pudding, so to speak. That, and there's no understanding that it has affected wheat yields, for example. So I think we're okay on that. Yeah, Juliet, did I answer that question? There were a couple of others that I was looking at, but maybe I got to most of them.
To add to the soil nutrient question, we do have a lot of evidence which shows, as Priya said, first is the carbon content, organic carbon content. The other two which are more likely to be seen is the amount of nitrogen and sulfur, which also gets almost completely burnt out if you burn the residue. And then in a lower amount, one can also find that if you're not burning residue and if you're mulching or incorporating, there can be gains for elements like phosphorus and potassium. So these are the broadly agreed upon nutrients by various studies done across regions, which find that no burn solution, in situ solutions often lead to these gains.
Right. Thank you both. So I don't see any additional questions in the chat. So in the interest of time, I will conclude. Just to remind everyone that if you are interested, all the sessions of the AQMx webinar series on the sectoral guidance will be made available on the CCAC website in case you've missed a webinar on a topic you are interested in. And I also want to encourage all interested participants to join the AQMx focus group so you can actively contribute to the development of new content, new functionalities for the platform. So you can simply scan this QR code and fill in a very quick registration form, and we'd love to hear from you. So with that, I really want to thank again our great speakers. Thank you to all participants for a very engaging session. And I wish you all a very good rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.